should tell you this.
I didn't start talking fast enough.
I'm now going to practice with the singing angels, but I must remember this. I've asked them to memorize the words to a hymn, and it's a pretty big job. But I said to the kids, if you do this, I'll bring each of you a donut. Now, I forgot to bring the donut, so I better go do that now.
You know that Pastor Wolf's job description is you get to do whatever you want, whenever you want it. But you have to have a microphone when you talk in church, so that's why we were best buddies. So he gets the microphone from my cheek there. So you have a sheet that was given to you with your bulletin, and this is for serving here at Christ the Servant, because for the past month we've been talking about the Lord sends me to be in the world, and now we're going to look at the Lord calls me to serve in my church. And you just take a look at the things you might want to be involved in here, and you can check it now, and you can always say no when the time comes if we ask you to participate in something, but this is just to let us know that you have interest in these various things here. So just take a look at them, a very brief description of each of them, and fill that out there. Under environment, landscape care, landscape irrigation care, help maintain and repair and adjust the irrigation system before or after plants die. And Pastor Diane said, after plants die? And I said, yes, because we have to seal off the water then when the plants die. That's our goal, is to have as many plants die as possible. Then we don't have to care for them anymore, unless I find someone who wants to care for them. Get the idea? See how this works? See how many plants are there on that artist's rendering there? Do you know how much that would cost us annually? I mean, to put them in, it would cost $5,000–$10,000, and then each year, with the water it would take and maintaining, every one of those has a drip, right? Maintaining that and then cleaning up the mess, that would cost us probably $500,000 a month. So I love rocks. I just love rocks. But please, the way that you would like to help serve, that would be wonderful. If you're at this service and you can press a button, we'd love to have you sit over there and press a button for the worship screen up there. That would help out too, so help us with that. I was going to talk a lot more about that, but because of the events that are happening in our world, there's some other things that I need to talk about. First of all, we get to the prophet Isaiah, and it is very apropos for us at this time. He's talking about fasting. You see that word? It comes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Well, it's a religious practice. It's going without food. Now, for the people during Isaiah's time, it had a very different impact than it does for us. For us, getting food for the day is nothing. How much time does it take for you to prepare your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner? Well, hardly any time at all. For breakfast this morning, bowl, cereal, milk, bran cereal. Crunch, 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 crunch. I'm done. I come to church. That's all it was. Other meals, how long does it take you? Open refrigerator and freezer at the same time. What do I have left over? Okay, in the microwave. Boop. I wish they'd make these microwaves faster. They just take so long. Ding, ding. Okay, I'm ready to eat, right? It doesn't take us hardly any time for food. But think about people during the time of Isaiah. The procuring and preparing food many hours per day. For you, think what it would be like if it was Thanksgiving every day and you spent that much time on your food. Or even Super Bowl Sunday, because apparently that's the second most food-consuming day of the whole year. And I didn't know it was that big a thing. But apparently, I am very ill-prepared for the Super Bowl tonight. It is tonight, isn't it? What are you going to eat during the Super Bowl? Me? I don't know, chips and salsa. Open a bag, open a jar, I'm done. But for the many hours it would take to prepare food, when you fast for a day, that means you now have many hours freed up where you can practice your faith. That's what fasting means. You now have many more hours of the day to be faithful and to practice your faith. For us, fasting means being hungry all day. It doesn't give us any more time. So during the time of Isaiah, the message is, you people are doing this fasting, but you're doing it wrong. It says, look, you serve your own interest on your fast day and even oppress all your workers. Your religious life is doing the exact opposite of what it should be doing. Your fasting, your faithing, should be to be out in the world and to be God's light in the world and to be the actions of Christ in the world. And Isaiah is saying, at this time, he's saying, you're doing it all wrong. You quarrel and fight. You strike with a wicked fist. Shouldn't you instead humble yourself? This is the fast that I choose, says Isaiah. Listen, this is what we should be about, to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, and to let the oppressed go free, to break every yoke, to share your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into your house. Now, I know that there are things that we don't do because we think they're not safe, because we want to be safe. Who here would say it's a good idea to bring the homeless poor into your house? How many of you would say, that's a great idea, let's go out to the streets, and let's go out to the drainage areas, and let's go out to the underpasses, and let's find those homeless people and bring them to our house? No one's going to say that's a good idea, especially if you have children. That's dangerous. Now, as a church, we do just that. Several times a year, we invite the homeless poor to live at Christ the Servant through Family Promise, helping them to become independent, financially able to get their own apartment and be able to take care of themselves, and it has great success. We do that twice a year at least. But inviting certain people in? No. But Isaiah doesn't say that. Isaiah doesn't say, oh, and find the safe ones and bring them. But he says, if you do that, then your light, then your healing, then your faith will be in action. It's not the religious stuff that you do. It's the concrete actions you take. Now, our government, our country, this is where everyone's going to get mad, our country will do what it's going to do when it finally figures out what it's going to do. And we know that no matter how fast things go, they don't go fast. As fast as things want to go, they will be slowed down, because that's how our country is designed, right? It's designed to be big and cumbersome and slow, because sometimes slow means more thought and figuring things out and what is the right thing to do. And we have our branches of government that function. And is it any surprise when our government functions that way? However, we are people that are different. I have been involved in resettling refugees since 1978. We have a thing in our Lutheran church called LIRS, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. This is the only place I've been where it hasn't been active in this state. But in other states, we would work with them to bring in refugees. Back in 1978, it was Vietnamese. Do you think that was popular? To bringing Vietnamese into the community? Oh boy, that was a battle. That was a battle. In the 90s, in Texas, it was Bosnians bringing them in. And here's what our church did. I said, we're helping resettle refugees. They're Bosnians. They're going to come here. And in fact, we have a husband and a wife that married from different, you know what that means there? They can't live one place or the other because they will be killed by the ones who are in that area. So they come to us, and this is the way it is when you pick up refugees at the airport. First of all, they've been in refugee camps for a year, 2 years, 3 years. They come, they didn't know what country they were going to come to because they don't get to choose. They didn't know what state they were coming to because they didn't get to choose. And they came, we picked them up at the airport, and they had a bag, a net, a cloth net bag with clothes that weren't theirs, and that's all they had. Husband, wife, 2 children, daughter and son. They come with us. We open the door to their new apartment, which was 1 block away from my house, because they're going to live with us. They're not going to live on the south side of Dallas where all the other refugees get dumped. We didn't bring people here to struggle in poverty. We brought them here to be like us because that's what the world wants to be. If you've ever traveled outside this country, that's a common thing you hear people say. My dream is to go to America. Let's hope it stays that way, that dream is still alive. So we bring these people in, and because our church caught that vision, we had an apartment, totally furnished, totally foodified in the kitchen, stocked for probably 2 months worth of food. And this was even including back then a VCR. Remember what those things are? A VCR and a stack of tapes of Sesame Street. You know why? Learn English. The kids will watch it, the parents will watch it, they'll start learning English. And the people of the refugee service said, no, you're doing too much. And I said, we're barely doing enough. We had great success. We even employed the father at the church. He's still an employee there. We wanted them to be like us. They saved, they worked hard, they even then bought a house, and then they were able to sponsor more of their own family to be resettled in this country. See, this is what we do. Even here in Las Vegas, we find out there are Lutherans from Liberia that are being resettled here, and not by us Lutherans, but by the Catholics. And so we say, we got to jump in on this, and we're involved with them. And so this is, again, how we fast, how we practice our faith. We say, we're going to be involved with them. What do you need? And my intention was, what do you need here? And of course, now there's just a few things over there because we delivered 2 truckloads yesterday to them. And they're just so thrilled every time they get these items. But then we find out it's not just here, it's in Liberia also. 14 years of civil war, the Ebola crisis, all these orphans. And there is a great need there. And so we present that to you, and here's how our challenge here at Christ the Servant has been playing out. We need $3,000 per well. Well, let's put in 2 wells to provide permanent, safe water. Not cases of bottled water, but permanent, safe water. And then let's build an orphanage. That'll cost $25,000. So we're at about $30,000, $31,000. And because of you, it's 3 weeks now, we're at $15,000 already here. We're figuring out how do we get that money sent and how do we get the process going right now. We thought it was going to be months, but it's right now. And so now here's what I get to do because of your faithfulness, your generosity, is I am now going to other Lutheran pastors and saying, Pastor Bill, you need to get on this. And Pastor Bill says, you know, I've been wanting to do something like this, global mission right here in our own neighborhoods. Local but global. And so Pastor Bill, he got his men's breakfast. A dozen men sitting down to eat breakfast at their church. They had Pastor Jayla come in and talk to them. $3,000 right there on the spot. So I said, that's great, but match us. If that one church matches us in 3 weeks, it's done. We had a meeting with our architect, member of our church here. He's actually our church council president. He's designing it all for them. We met together so he can do the designs. Now here's the vision. It's not just this one, but now we can say, we've done it. It took us this long. Now the next community over can build their orphanage. Here are the plans. And we can get more churches involved in doing this. Because it's also the Lutheran Church in Liberia that is spearheading this effort. So we're working together. It's a match made in heaven, folks. And it's happening fast. So every time someone comes up to me, as last night happened, a $3,000 check and a $500 check last night in worship, I tell them, you know what? I use you as examples when I go to these other pastors. You think this isn't going to work in your church? Remember when I said we need $3,000 for a well, and you said, what can we do with $6,000? And I thought, whoa, hold your horses there. I don't know if we're going to get that far. 6, do I hear 12? Do I hear 15? Do I hear 30? That's who we are. The world is going to go its way, and the world is going to point the finger. Isaiah says, stop the pointing of the finger. But the world likes to point the finger and say, those are dangerous. That action is dangerous. We have to stop doing that. We are different. And we will always stay different. Because we don't have the mind of anything except the mind of Christ. Did you hear that last phrase from 1 Corinthians chapter 2 that was read? But we have the mind of Christ. We don't need to debate and ask ourselves, what would Jesus do? Because we have that mind already. We know what the faith thing is to do. We know what the fasting thing is to do. And that's who we are. Jesus put it that you're the salt of the earth. Oh, yeah, I get that. But then he said, if you lose your flavor, your taste, if salt loses its taste, what are you going to salt with? You're the light of the world. If you don't shine that light, the darkness wins. So when that next news report comes and it's all screaming and shouting and how horrible, you remember that you're different. We're different. We think in the midst of, no, let's stop, we think, how fast can we go? How many lives can we change? I thought it was going to be a couple years before those children would have that place, but we're looking at a couple months. And then those children will be cared for. So already the plans are in place. I asked Pastor Jayla, he said that he and his wife are planning to go to Liberia next March. I'm going. Who else is going to go? They told me their round-trip airfare last year was $1,500 from Las Vegas to get all the way to that community in Mount Barclay, Liberia. And then they'll put us up. Let's make those plans. Because we want to celebrate with those children. I want to be with those children going lower, 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 higher, higher, higher. Remember that? Wouldn't that be great if there's a group of us who are celebrating with people on the other side of the world because we have the mind of Christ. Amen. Peace of the Lord be with you always. Please stand up, walk around, greet each other with that peace of Christ.